Well, it's that time of year again. Indy cars are going the wrong way around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but at least they're going around it in one direction or the other. Welcome to our first day of coverage of 2 of the Indy GP here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We've got a really good video for you today. We're going to go through the starting grid. We're going to talk to 3 star drivers, including the pole sitter, Alex Palou, for this race. Spoiler alert. And believe it or not, I think a lot of people are not mentioning this, and I'm kind of surprised that they aren't, but, you know, their loss is our gain. It is the 10th anniversary, although it's the 11th race and like the 75th on the road course that IndyCar has run since 2014. But yeah, 10 years ago, the GP of Indy began here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so we have a feature, a history segment on the GP. We're stepping it up. We're standing on business here in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Shout out to Chase Holden and Race Cards Live. So, without any further ado, let's take a look at how they will line up for tomorrow's Soniso, is that how you say it? Soniso, something? Sancio Grand Prix of Indianapolis. Alex Palou, defending winner of last year, you'll hear from him later on in this video of the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, starts where he finished off last year in the pole position. Starting alongside him is Christian Lundgaard, who is so strong on the Indy road course, as is the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team. It should be a good race for them to start off of May. Will Power in the inside of row 2, Penske lockout in that row with Joseph Newgarden, defending Indy 500 winner, on the outside. Pato O'Ward, who's had a miserable season, hasn't led a lap and yet has won a race. That describes his season thus far totally perfectly. He'll be looking to lead at least one lap tomorrow. Number 5 rolling off from P5. Scott Dixon on the outside. He won here in the fall race last year, which no longer exists. So Scott Dixon is going to be looking to win the GP for the first time in his career. Alexander Rossi, car 7 in P7. Nice of McLaren to coordinate that for us, alongside Marcus Armstrong in the IU sponsorship. Graham Rahal was frustrated in qualifying, but not as frustrated as he was after losing an engine in the morning warm-up this morning. Marcus Armstrong also did, spoke to Honda. They said that's an isolated issue to those 2 cars, and it's not supposed to be a problem in the other cars. I suppose we'll wait and see on that one. Felix Rosenqvist in the 10th spot. Pietro Fittipaldi again for Rahal. All 3 cars in the Fast 12 here on the IMS road course in 11th. Rinus VeeKay, former winner here in 12th. Scott McLaughlin, not a great qualifying session for the title sponsored car, but McLaughlin will roll off lucky 13th. Kyle Kirkwood, the fastest of the Andretti cars, but a kind of difficult 14th starting position for him. Augustine Canapino's been fast in practice, but wasn't quite as fast in qualifying. P15 for Canapino. Santino Ferrucci, who's in the top 10 in points going into the month of May, rolls off 16th. Jack Harvey returning to the series, but not the Indy 500 this year, in 17th position. Theo Pourchaire, the 3rd Arrow McLaren driver, in 18th spot in his first trip to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Linus Lundqvist in 19th spot for Chip Ganassi Racing. Christian Rasmussen on the outside. Marcus Ericsson had a disastrous qualifying effort in 21st. Luca Ghiotto in his 2nd IndyCar race and first trip to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the outside. Romain Grosjean is another puzzling driver, slow in qualifying, fast in practice. Colton Herta was run out of fuel during qualifying and was very, very upset about that. 24th position for a former winner here on the IMS road course. Kiffin Simpson in 25th. Tom Blomqvist, a strange qualifying for him, in 26th. And Stingray Robb has been off the pace all weekend long. So we mentioned it, pole sitter Alex Palou. We got a pretty good interview, I would say, with him yesterday during the media bullpen. This season, you know, conservation has been the word, whether it's fuel, whether it's tires. You know, what have you noticed that's been any different? Why we've been talking about strategy quite the way we have this year?
I would say tires a little bit. Also, I mean, we changed the tires. Firestone changed the tires, and as they should have for the hybrid.
But that then means it's a harder compound, right?
Yes, and then we took weight out of the car, so that makes it a very different compound to what we had last year. But that allows you to, Barber, for example, to know that from the lap 1 that you can go on a 2-stop instead of a 3. And people go for it like we did. Didn't work. But I think it makes it exciting. I think it makes it interesting. We also have the same amount of laps normally on the races that we've previously had. So we all know that whenever there's 3 laps of yellow, that we can make it on 1 stop less or something like that, like they did at Long Beach or at Barber that we tried. So I would agree with Scott that it's always a bit the same. Like if you look at August, Scott here, he did the same. Yeah. Gateway, he did the same. Laguna, he did the same. Long Beach this year, he did the same. So if you look back, it's always the same. Whenever you're in a position of not being able to win by pace, you try and do it by strategy, either if it's fuel or tires. So that's why it's interesting. He's the best at it, and hopefully you can match it one day.
2 or 3 stop race.
Hopefully 3. I would prefer if it's 3. I like to go fast. I like to go for it. It was a bit frustrating at Barber when I could see that people was flying by and you're like, well, I cannot push, I cannot defend, I just gonna stay here and save fuel. So hopefully 3, and hopefully it's the fastest, because I was with 3 in Long Beach and it was lower than 2, so let's see.
And Pelot wasn't the only driver we talked to. We also talked to Felix Rosenqvist, and I think his answer about the strategy aspect of IndyCar racing, especially in recent times, is very interesting. Do you like racing conservatively, or do you kind of wish that we could push a little bit more throughout the race?
I like that we have the variety. I would say, it might have been more focus on that recently. I think drivers and teams have figured out how to make maybe a 2-stopper work where they couldn't before. We went with a 2-stopper in Barber, which wasn't the winning strategy. But I think when we do, I'm probably one of the stronger guys, especially on the fuel. So I'm not against it in that sense. But it's definitely, like last year I did a 3-stopper in Barber and went through the field. And it's good fun. It's really good fun. But the problem is when everyone does the same. So I like that we have both. If you can have a 50-50 split, that's the ideal, because then you have good racing, passing, action, and I think people like to see that, to see the maybe a strategy win that you didn't think could win in the beginning. That's a cool story. So.
And we wouldn't be talking about strategy or conservation or what this race and racetrack kind of look like without talking to one Scott Dixon. He's not won a race in May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway since he won his Indy 500 in 2008. He's looking to change that this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where. There's a little more talk about fuel savings, but that's how I won my first race back in 2001. So I don't understand what they're talking about. It's not like it's something new. Yeah. And it's just trying to eliminate a stop, and it's not easy. It's very difficult, and maybe that's why is that not many people are doing it.
So what do you think this race is going to play out like? I mean, what strategy-wise can you expect here? I mean, do you think this is a 2-stop or a 3-stop track?
It's more likely a 3-stop. I think you got to look at the races where there's a caution at the front end, and that's where it kind of flips. Long Beach wasn't. That was tough as well, extremely tough to do. What we did. Sometimes it kind of depends on how the tire efficiency is and degradation. Cooler weathers could maybe be a little easier to do a 2-stopper, but fuel-wise around here with the long straights, it's pretty difficult. Like last year when we did it in the August race, it's tough to pull off just because you lose so much time doing it. But if you get a caution at the front end, man, it's definitely possible.
You and Will had a bit of a banter about the track in the press conference, but Will mentioned something that I thought was really interesting. He said it was easy to pass here. What kind of brings that on? I think you just mentioned the long straights. Is it literally just the long straights?
Yeah, I think any track you go to, if it's got long straights and big braking zones, that's a pretty easy equation, especially with overtake. Especially towards the end of the race, if you can pressure people enough that they use their overtake a lot. But yeah, I think it goes through periods, this track actually. Sometimes it races really well, and sometimes it's actually really tough to pull off a pass, depending on who you're competing with. But it generally races really well, and that's what makes it a good show.
So it's hard to believe, but there have been, as of tomorrow, 11 races run on the IMS road course in May, and it's been 10 years since the first trip to the Indianapolis road course for the Indy cars back in 2014. We did a little bit of a retrospective on the Grand Prix that first year and all of the things that led up to it. It's a pretty good segment. With tomorrow being the 10th anniversary of the May Grand Prix of Indianapolis, let's take a look at where the event started with the first running in 2014. The idea was born in March of 2013 when new IndyCar CEO Mark Miles went to the Boston Consulting Group to better understand how to improve the IndyCar series. One of the points the BCG made was to utilize the Indianapolis Motor Speedway more, and the road course built for Formula One in 2000 provided the answer. The series had a test in the fall of 2013 with Graham Rahal and Ryan Briscoe to test tires and also to test different layouts. After testing several different layouts, it was eventually decided to repave and reconfigure the road course to improve the raceability of the track. The most notable addition was a high-speed chicane on the entrance to Holman Boulevard. In spite of the advice of the Boston Consulting Group to run the road course race as the season finale, the race was announced for the second weekend of May in 2014, which moved the opening day of Indy 500 practice back only a single day, creating a very busy and stressful weekend of road course and oval running for the teams. To help differentiate the GP from its much older brother, the Indy 500, it was decided that the race would begin with a Grand Prix racing style standing start. Standing starts were something that IndyCar was experimenting with around this time, and what happened at the GP was directly responsible for why they aren't used today.
And we've got a car stopped in a huge accident on the main straightaway. 2 cars involved.
Surprise pole sitter Sebastian Saavedra stalled at the start, and while thankfully no drivers were hurt in the ensuing melee, Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard was not so lucky. He was waving the green flag for the race and was hit in the left arm, and while he was bruised, he was luckily not seriously injured. The rest of the race ended up being one of the most entertaining Indianapolis Grand Prix to date, with rookie Jack Hawksworth leading until the early pit stops, which turned the lead over to Schmidt-Peterson Racing's Simon Pagenaud. Despite a few more yellow flags, the only thing that stood in Pagenaud's way was fuel mileage. After an economy run from Oriol Servia nearly stole the show, a late pit stop dashed his hopes of victory. Pagenaud saved enough fuel and held off eventual Indy 500 winner Ryan Hunter-Reay to become the first IndyCar driver to win a race at the Speedway driving clockwise. So tomorrow, we've heard from a few different drivers. You heard from them in this video. We've heard from them on NBC and elsewhere. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a red race, which would suggest to me that it's going to be, the preferred strategy will be a 3-stop, especially if it goes green to the end. I think if we're looking at everybody being on the same strategy, you would prefer a 3-stop to a 2-stop. At least everyone will be going hard. But I think, much like Long Beach earlier this year and even Barber to a certain extent, I think you're hoping for an early yellow to get some guys to bite on an alternate strategy, to think maybe, well, might be able to make a 2-stop work, or I might be able to make a 3-stop work if I was working from a 2-stop strategy. That will make the race good tomorrow. If it goes green to the end, chances are Alex Palou is going to run away with this, or Christian Lundgaard. Both of those drivers extremely strong here in the past. So I wouldn't expect a challenge from the midfield unless strategy becomes a factor. But I think there is a possibility that strategy will become a factor. We've got 27 cars that are going to be funneling into the road course turn 1 here. So the chance of a full course yellow, I think, is very high, higher than it's been in the past few years here at the Indy road course. But certainly guys like Scott Dixon, Will Power, you can't count them out. They're up at the front of the field. Rinus VeeKay, if you're looking for a spoiler, he's been very quick. And I think that if you're looking for somebody maybe a little bit further down the field, Rinus is the driver you'll be looking at. So thank you guys so much for watching, and you'll see all of our coverage of the race tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be talking to some drivers after the race as well. We'll see you in the next video.